Good day, podcast community. Pete Kane here, Podcast Pete and lifestyle coach. And we have a special podcast. It's called Flip the Script. Joel and I have had podcasts and we know each other from church. And he's a book author, a children's author. And we were talking about a couple subjects. So we're flipping the script. And I'm going to give the mic to Joel and let him ask whatever he wants. So Joel, thank you for being here. Introduce yourself and then we'll be glad to get into the podcast.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me again, Pete. Always love talking to you, man. My name's Joel. I'm a young father and husband here in Atlanta. I'm a children's book author working on a young adult novel now. And I work in full-time ministry. So that's kind of what I do in my day job. So just to give you a heads up, we're on a ticking time bomb here. My daughter's taking a nap. So if she wakes up, I'm going to have to hop over. But so we were talking about morning routine. So the first half of this discussion, we're going to kind of talk about this, and then we'll move on to another subject. But I was asking Pete, in 2026, I'm looking to craft a new morning routine for myself because I want something that'll keep me healthy spiritually, physically, and mentally. And so I was asking Pete about his morning routine, and it sounded like he had some pretty interesting things to say. So Pete, walk us through your morning routine.
Yeah.
What would you suggest?
The same thing every day. I think consistency matters. And so what I have been working on for years, many years, is a consistent pattern, because whatever we're consistent with will continue. And there's a couple things here, but let me just give you first my routine. I wake up, I drink water. I think, then I start, I'll think for anywhere from 10 minutes to 15 minutes, but I just kind of process like dreams, just anything that's going through complete silence, but I think. So after I think, I actually have been doing this for maybe a year. I read Proverbs. Whatever the day is, I read that one chapter. So I read, then I start journaling, and my journaling has evolved. I never was a journaler. Never. Before my stroke, my only journals were occasionally when I was at dark places, bad places. I all heard, hey, you got to have a gratitude journal. So I journal for a couple of days and it wouldn't work. So I just, throw it out the window.
Right.
But now I have 17 full journals done. Every single day. I'm journaling multiple times. I know it's a little excessive, but what I have replaced it with, I started in social media years ago. So I was familiar with that world, that online world. So I would definitely look at my phone and things like that. Now, if I look at my phone, it's rare. My first default is grab my journal. I keep a journal, and they're this size, so I can put them in my man bag. But so I drink, I think, I read, I journal, and I plan and I implement every single day, same thing. So I keep my books right there, my planners right there. So I try to think about, when I'm journaling, what did I learn from yesterday? And I think the reason it works is I have stacked a lot of things on top of each other. When I was at Overture as a 55 and older, I'd go to the gym at 5 a.m. every day. And the only time I missed is when I busted my ribs and I was out for 3 weeks.
Okay. Yeah, right. You get an excuse for that one.
But what I did was that same routine, and the idea that when I was writing, I was learning what did I learn the day before? What am I thinking about? Like, what am I going to write about if I have a thought? Because we have between 12 and 60,000 thoughts that go through our head. How do you keep them straight?
Goodness,
man. And it's getting even faster pace, AI, all this stuff. And we think we can keep them straight, but we can, because a lot of our thoughts are negative thoughts from our past. So we're constantly replaying these thoughts that may not help us in whatever we're doing. Right. So I try to be aware of getting them out of my head onto paper.
Hmm.
There's something magical, and I know we've maybe touched on this. You see a lot of people will type when they're in school because they can type 10 times faster than they can write. And they think that I'm typing my notes and that's going to be helpful because I'm getting those notes down. But there's something magical, pen to paper. It rewires your brain. So my brain has been rewired over the last 4 years to think deeper, to process conversations deeper.
Hmm.
Because when I am talking to you, let's just say it's at church, I'm listening to every word you say. I am totally present because I don't have a lot of this stuff going on because I have the active brain, ADD, and dyslexia to throw on top of it. So it's a weird combination, but it was always hard for me to concentrate because I
Hmm.
always wanted to do 50 things when I should be doing just two things right. So now in my journal, it's the top three things I want to do, and I try to do that first thing. But I just try to get the important things done. So when I'm planning a day, it eliminates my distractions. It's easy for me to get distracted, very easy. So
Right.
if I have a written plan, I've thought about it, I've journaled, I've I've just kind of gone through a process. Maybe it takes me 30 minutes.
The whole routine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes longer if I've had a day the previous day where I had a lot going on and I'm writing about it. If I'm writing for 10, 15 minutes, it may go a little bit longer. But I don't start the day unless I plan it. And so every single day becomes an adventure that I'm kind of steering the ship.
Hmm.
So we all have distractions, all of us, some more than others, but my distractions are minimal compared to what they used to be. And what habits create is outcomes. So when you start stacking all these things that I'm doing in the morning, I can't wait to get out of bed. I mean, I'm just like a
Wow. I would love that.
we're
Wow.
in a cage and it could be freezing out. There's nothing better in the past where it's like 20 degrees out and the bed's warm and you're going
Yeah.
like, man, I ain't moving because it's comfortable. But
Hmm.
we say in our business of coaching, if we get out of our comfort zone, we grow. You don't achieve anything in life unless you get out of your comfort zone. If you want to write a book, I'm not a book writer. I was never even a journaler, but I have a process, the 12 P's, and I can't wait to do it each day. And I allocate time to get those thoughts on paper. And I'm really interested because I watched your video. I'm interested
Oh
in
yeah.
speaking the 12 points because I want to write, but I also want to move faster to help people get through sticky points because everybody has them. And I
Right.
think
Right.
that process has absolutely set me free because
Mm.
I go to sleep. I never used to. I had the active brain. So getting to sleep, you're all those thoughts going through your brain. Hey, did I get this done? Did I do this? I sleep like a baby, like your daughter. I sleep. My head hits the pillow. Maybe it takes me a minute or two,
Hmm.
but it isn't long. I go out, I wake up refreshed because
Yes.
I think that routine has trained my
So
body.
yeah, so that's a part of it. It also comes to evening routine, which is not what we're talking about. But if you keep your face out of a screen for the last like hour or so of your evening, and you're just reading a book or you're talking to loved ones, that's better than you being on your phone. Because as soon as you put your phone away and you try to go to sleep, your mind, all that the blue light and the bug mind, like just you can't stop it. So I have friends who can't sleep, but part of their problem, in my opinion, is that they're on their screens until the time they try to go to bed.
Totally,
Okay,
totally.
so let me re-say this to you. So you wake up, you take some water or coffee or whatever it is. You
No,
you
no,
think,
no. I don't do coffee. I do
don't coffee.
coffee not until I drink my 20 ounces of water, and I'll
Okay.
probably because I got it. hydrate. Your
Right.
brain needs hydration because it dehydrates through the night.
Okay. Okay. So you wake up 20 ounces of water, or at least you start that process of drinking the water. You think for 10, 15 minutes, you let your, yeah. And I do the same thing. I just like to have silence a little time. Sometimes just let my mind do what it's going to do. Then you read Proverbs and then you journal. And then after you journal, whatever it is that you're journaling, something internally, something spiritually, something that you're planning, whatever it is you're journaling, and then you plan and implement your day. Do you have a physical health routine that's included in that? Or is that more like throughout your week, you're going 2 or 3 times?
I'm in the gym 5 days a week. I go to
Wow.
PT and OT one day a week. I used to go to two times. So most of my gym is early.
Right.
If I have a 7:30 podcast, that opens at 6, then I flip it. So, but I always go. And the reason I can go at, let's just say it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, not all the time, is because I know that's the time I learn. So I can't wait to get there because I close my eyes when I'm on the bicycle. I have to have a bicycle. I don't walk and run like others. So that's my cardio. But I close my eyes and I focus on what I'm listening to, whatever it might be. And it brings me to a higher level because I
Interesting.
never used to have that kind of routine. And it would be easy to go, maybe I'll do 20 minutes today, not 30 because I'm bored. I'm not bored because I feel I'm focusing. I don't even keep my eyes open. I had one guy came to me and he tapped me on the shoulder. I guess he was saying, I don't know what, but he said, Paige. And I said, no, Pete. And he goes, oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were Paige. And he goes, sorry to bother you, because he saw that I was just eyes closed and focused, but
Right.
I'm working on being focused. So I don't want the TV, the people walking around in the gym to distract me. So that's why I close my eyes and focus on every word that the person says.
Wow. Okay. So, question for Pete then. What are you listening to while you're on the bike?
I love it. I love it. So I subscribe to Growth Day. There's
Okay.
and it's a personal development, personal growth community of about 300,000 plus people from all around the world.
Goodness gracious.
Everything. So if I want to be a better parent or better grandparent, there's a program in there. If I want to learn more about money, there's a program on it. If I want to learn more about relationships, there's a program. So I have 5 things that I'm working on. 5, not 10, 5. And I try to gear all my learning towards those 5 things, which helps to be intentional about your learning. We do the 4 human drivers of aliveness, connection, meaningful purpose, and personal growth. When we retire, which you're way off from that, but I went to my 50th high school reunion and they were all asking me, Pete, when are you retiring? And I said, never, never. I'm just getting started. And here's what happens. We die 2 years after we retire if we lose our connections,
Hmm.
lose our meaningful purpose, stop growing, we stop living life, and
Right.
our health just goes down. So if we're growing, if we're making those connections, and I will say to the people listening, when I did the podcast with you, I was like, my jaw dropped because I pick up on little things. And then when I found out you guys don't even have a TV, I went, that's it. That's it. He's not distracted by
Mm.
culture life. I'm not saying you can't have TV, but
Right.
it takes away from other things.
So
And
many other things.
this
Yeah.
person watches 4 hours of TV, average.
Goodness
What could you
gracious.
do if you just cut it in half? If you took 2 hours, that's 14 hours a week that you could use to do something meaningful, but you're consuming media.
Right, right, and I would show you our living room right now, but there's Christmas and toys and stuff everywhere. Mother-in-law came into town, she bought tons of toys, and so they're everywhere. But yeah, sometimes I'm like, I barely have time to do what I'm already doing. If we added a TV and like, what? How do people find time to watch TV? I just don't understand. Like, also, we just really appreciate me and my wife, each other's presence and time with our daughter. So, okay, last question about the morning routine. Then,
Yeah.
someone like me or someone who's listening, if they want to start a morning routine, but they can't just jump in 100% like you're doing, right? You've developed this over years. What would you
Yes.
say is the first step to developing a morning routine? Like if I was going to start tomorrow morning, I guess tomorrow's Christmas Eve, which Merry Christmas, by the way.
Mhm.
If I was going to start tomorrow morning, what would you suggest to be just the first step to take?
I've had, I, I think that the body dehydrates through the night. When I drink my water, I come to, it just wakes me up. So
Okay.
and so even when I'm reading and journaling, I may not drink it right away, but I'll
Right.
drink it through 10, 15 minutes. So I think what you have to think about is what you will do to get started. The journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step. It doesn't start with me doing all 7 of those things right away. Because if you put all those things together, that may be overwhelming. Just start with one thing and just try to get in a routine that stack another. Then the next week, stack one more. The more you can stack, it's called Atomic Habits. The more
Yes,
you,
that book is amazing.
because willpower is a misnomer, same as multitasking. There's no such thing as willpower. I cut out sugar, but here are the baked people bringing over baked goods. If it's in the house, I'm going to eat it. So so I can say, oh, I have the best willpower. I'll never. That's why you go to the gym in January, you can't hardly find anything to work out on because everybody thinks, okay, this is going to be the year. And they think, I'm going to do it this year. And they rely on willpower. Willpower doesn't work. You have to stack positive habits of transformation on top of each other and keep stacking them. Keep stacking them. The more you stack, I know I'm not going to miss. Even though I
Mm,
could, I know that's my time to meditate, to think, to pray, to focus, and I'm not going to miss that. So
wow.
even though it's like I could sit back and do nothing for the rest of the day, I won't do it because I've stacked so many on top of each other.
Okay, so you would suggest whatever, like for you, it's water, and you probably suggest that to everybody, a cup of water. But uh, whatever's going to be this first habit, get that down. Start with that, whatever you want to be the first thing in your morning routine. And then once you have that down, add the second habit. And then once you have that down, add the third habit. Is that how you would approach that?
And that I would say journaling, what journaling did for me gave me more self-awareness of who I was, how I could really flesh out things out of the head because we have so much going through it. Writing it down. I know, let's just say we were talking and it's 8 o'clock at night and you drop a value bomb of some sort. I don't think about, I won't remember that. I always think, what did Joel say on that conversation that was so enlightening, so diff, and so I remember things like I've never. Now,
Hmm.
I remember. I forget short term really things but that's a stroke thing. It just affected certain parts of the brain. But
Right.
I can journal about things like this. I'll journal about what you said, how you said it, and it just helps me to flush out the self awareness and just the being present. I had a person on my podcast, and she was a coach. She went through um, breast surgery, cancer, and she had 8 surgeries, totally rocked her world. And she talked about what it did, helping her be present, helping her appreciate life, helping her have a stronger faith, helping her through all this stuff. And that was a terrible thing to go through.
Hmm.
But what happened, and she journals, is journaling just helps you flesh out those thoughts that we have, and helps really, I think, with positive, not, I'm not saying like positive thinking, because that's not really what it is. It's really thoughts. I mean, we're born in the image of God. So
Amen.
we're born, we're special, we're just such unique. Everybody's unique. Everybody has a single foot uh, thumbprint. You
Yeah.
think that there's not the same. So if we're born to create, why don't we create our life? So the more we can lean into creating versus consuming other people's lives, which
Hmm.
is so much a part of why people are at each other's throat, because they're constantly programming themselves to judge people. And that just doesn't help have anything positive go on in your life. I mean, you got to give people grace. You may not believe the same thing I do, but let me just appreciate you. Let me understand. Let me keep my mind open to what you might say that I never really thought about that. But Joe brings up a good point. Maybe I got to throw the TV out.
Well, so that's not okay. So to some extent, consuming that word makes it feel like engorgement, where you're just shoving stuff down in your mind and stuff. But there is an element that, experiencing a story that's told by a human is a beautiful, a precious experience. I'm in the
Yes.
middle of a book series, right? I'm on the third book of this trilogy right now, and it is so. I disagree with the author. I think he's atheist, and he's making some points in some of the character. It's fiction, but he's making some points I disagree with. But the writing and the human experience of these characters is so good. It is so good, right? And so when I say I don't have a TV, it's not that we never watch shows. If I say I only have one bookshelf and my wife won't let me buy any more books, it's not that I never read, right? It's being selective about what we take in, and doing it for the sake of connecting to the human experience and in a well told story, and
Yes.
not for the sake of, and I don't want to say escape is a bad thing, because sometimes you want a story to take you away, but you can almost use it as a vice to be like, oh, I'm not going to take care of my own responsibilities. Let me just put on Stranger Things, or whatever it is. Anyway, so all that to say is, like, you're right. We should be creating and not consuming, but taking in well-told stories actually helps us create better.
Yes.
So
Totally. You sent me your video on how you wrote a children's book, and it was absolutely fascinating how you took me through how I could use the written word to come up, I mean, the spoken word, to use that, because we speak faster than we write. I've always
mhm.
done that for a long, long time. But just learning how you would take characters, put a name to a character, then you can go back and replace that character. It's like, wow, I didn't know that. I
Yeah.
And it kind of opened up a whole new thinking about how I can take the the spoken word to write a book and create a way to create. I mean, do something to create. And I think that, but that I didn't know anything about that until I watched your video.
Yeah, so I actually, the children's book I published was not dictated, but I've been writing another book and some short stories, but another book that's about 15 chapters in, and it's all dictated. Not a single word was written by the editing was written handwritten, but that's when I'm changing grammar and changing words. But every single chapter so far has been written while I was running on a jog. So
Hey,
yeah, and on top of that, short stories and things like that. And so it was a challenge for myself to say, I'm not allowed to write this unless I'm running, and I'm not allowed to run unless I'm writing, which ended up biting me in the butt because I got stuck on the story. And so then I was like, I want to run, but I don't know what I'm going to write. So then I ended up not writing. Anyway, so don't do that. But do you want me to talk about the dictation process or the
yes.
children's book process?
Well, I think children's would be a like a branch off of a book,
Okay.
because we teach our people that they need a book that people can consume to better know them. So if whatever they're
Mm,
doing, if they can put it in a book, it helps people to know the person, whatever they're
right.
doing, whatever their
Right.
business is, whatever their life is. So I would like you to kind of take us through, like, because you've done it for children's and you're doing
Mhm.
it for just take us through what that looks like. I would love to hear that.
Okay. Yeah. So, and I will say the stuff I'm writing is fiction and children's books. So there's a caveat there. But for a children's book, I would say there's five major steps for publishing a children's book. You're going to have the writing, the editing, the pictures, the formatting, and then the publishing. And obviously, I'm not going to get into marketing and how to prepare the launch or anything like
Yeah.
that. But when you're going to just first step to anything, right? Especially with a children's book, write it well. And then instead of just going on, okay, I've written this children's book, let me go get some artists. No, edit it, have people read it, make sure the cadence is good. It doesn't have to rhyme, it doesn't have to be in a sort of rhythmic tone, but some children's books are. And if that's your plan, make sure it's done well, right? Before you spend a ton of money to go get art made, make sure it's a story and the writing is where you want it. Third
Mhm.
step is to make art. If you're an artist yourself, that's great. I would highly suggest not to use AI art just because I'm opposed to that for the purposes of making money. There's tons of slop out there where people just go into AI and make a children's book, but there are tons of beautiful artists out there that you can commission, and that is the most expensive part, in my opinion. It should be, and make sure it's done well. Work with an artist that you like. Fourth
Mhm.
step, getting it formatted so you get. Oh, here's a tip as well. Make sure you look up the title of the children's book before
Mhm.
you publish it, because I published a children's book called Wild Feelings. Well, there was already a children's book called Wild Feelings out there by a way more famous author than I, and I didn't know that. And even when I saw it before I published, I was like, this art isn't that great. And I maintained that my art is better than his, but he was more famous. And so there's a problem in searching that. So getting it formatted, I went to a third party company for that, but you can go to Fiverr and then publishing it on Amazon or Ingram Spark or something like that. So that would say very simple, summary of what a children's book takes, but that's pretty much the steps. In terms of writing a fiction book, and especially when you're talking about this idea of how do people know you better, right? I get really frustrated at this idea that you're supposed to write to market. Now I know it's a business and I know people make money writing books. That's okay. And that's what they want to do. But for me personally, I don't want to just write a book that's going to fill space. That's not going to mean something. So what you need to do is decide what you're trying to say, right? For me, what I was trying to say is John 15:5, right? I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever abides in me and I in him, he it is who will bear much fruit, for apart from me, you can do nothing. I wanted to convey my concept of that verse in a story. So
Mhm.
if you want to tell a story and you want to write a book, but you aren't sure what to write about or what story to tell or what nonfiction approach to take, um, I would look into something called long thinking. And Pete was actually just talking about something similar. So there's a book by Cal Newport called Deep Work. And this is
Mhm.
a very similar idea to deep work. And Cal Newport has established this idea of long thinking. And essentially, what he says is take a pen and paper, a journal, without your phone, without a computer, without anything, go off into the woods, go off to somewhere beautiful for
Yeah.
1 to 3 hours and just start. What do I want to say about life? What do I believe? What do I want my brand to be? Whatever it is, just brainstorm, drawing arrows and circles and messy, 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 messy. In the last 20 minutes or so, look through your notes, reread them, and summarize on a clean sheet what you've thought and what you've said. That will give you a better idea of what you have to say to the world than anything you can come up with, any AI chat you can talk to. Um, or if you're more of a collaborator, invite a bunch of people who know you into a meeting like this and ask them, hey, let's brainstorm something I can say. Because as soon as you get that story that you want to tell or that book you want to write, there will be no stopping you. It's who you are. You're going to get it out there. So really quickly, the process of writing a fiction book, and people differ on this. There's a lot of discussion about this topic. The first step is to conceptualize the book, right? Write a one. So I follow something, Pete. I don't know if I've told you about this. It's called the snowflake method for writing a novel.
Mm-hmm.
So the snowflake method, it's just the same way that a fractal kind of grows from the same shape into the boom, 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 like a snowflake. This is the concept, right? So the snowflake method of writing a novel, I'm not going to go through all the steps. I'll send you a link so you can put it in the description.
Okay.
Um, the first step is a one sentence summary of your book, right? One sentence. Can you say your whole story in one sentence? And we're talking fiction here. So an example from mine is a young girl goes on an adventure with the eternal flame to save the world from freezing. Okay, that's
Hmm.
the story, right? That's the whole book, essentially. That's the whole story in one sentence. So work on that. Don't just come up with the first thing and write it down. Think about that for a day, to give it a week. Think on that. Really narrow it down. Try to get it to as little words as possible. Really solidify that.
Hmm.
And then what you're going to do, you're going to fractal that. So you're going to take the sentence and make it 5 sentences. Can you summarize that story into 5 sentences? So for me, it's Fiera, who's the main character. Fiera is a young tribal girl in the Valley Shiv, and she's noticing the cold is getting more brutal each year. When a solar eclipse threatens to freeze over the town, blah 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 blah. And then you 5 sentences, boom. This is the whole book, you including spoilers. You're not trying to avoid spoilers, right? And the last sentence being how you wrap it up, how it ends, right? And then once again, you take each of those sentences, those 5 sentences, you break those out into 5 sentences. So now you're organically plotting your novel without having to go through story structure lessons, without having to watch a bunch of YouTube videos. You're building out a page, 2 pages, 3 pages of what your book will be, what organically has come from your head onto the page. Okay, great. Now there's different steps, and I'll send you, like I said, the link. I I was looking for so many different answers when I first started writing my book, and I was like, "What? How am I supposed to?" I found this one article, Snowflake Method. He also has a book that I've purchased, but the
Mm-hmm.
article itself was all I needed. I read the article and I was like, "I can start." That article got me through the entire book. It's just the process. Yeah. So that's what I would suggest if you're wanting to write a book. There's step-by-step processes you can take. And anyway, I'll let you I'll let you respond, and then we can talk a little bit more about the writing process.
I love that you organically lay it out because I think what gets me stuck and anybody is what's a process that will allow me to get to the end result and how do I get there? It's overwhelming when you think about write a book. What am I going to say? How am I going to do it? What's it going to be about? All these thoughts are going through your head, which can't give you clarity until start with a sentence. And then from that sentence, you're growing that snowflake or that whatever you want to say off of that sentence. So it's naturally unfolding.
Hmm.
I think the reason you can write is you have that process of how you start and how it unfolds. So it's not that overwhelming. Because I think the number is, and I don't know if this is true, that something like 50% of the people want to write a book and only 2% do.
Yeah, something along those lines. Yeah.
Very small. And you think about, do you want to go to your grave with books in you? That's like, how is like when your daughter grows up and she can read her dad's book and show it to her friends. It's not like it's a thought that my dad was going to write a book. It's a book. It has a
Hmm.
story. It has pictures. It's it's an asset that will never go away. She'll always
Hmm.
have it, and I think that always scared me when I lived in a senior home and the average age was over 80. That I heard if I heard it one time, I heard it many times. I want to write a book, and I'd say, "Do it." And they wouldn't know where to begin. They wouldn't know what to do. And I think we keep putting it off because we don't have a system, a process of really getting that book out of our head onto paper. So I love
Yeah.
that process. I love that. Yeah, I would love to put it in the show notes because I think getting started is the toughest thing to anything.
Oh my gosh. And it's getting started on the long-term project. First of all, you have to have enough time in your next year to commit to writing a book. Don't try to write a book while you have a newborn, right? And that's something I've had to take very personally. For the past 8 months for her life, I have not written. Um, I have not been pursuing a long-term project. I've been writing short stories. I've been experimenting with this other book I told you about, but you have to know what you have, right? Now, to be fair, if you have the drive, like I said, if you have a story to tell, there's no stopping it coming out of you. So you will fit in that extra hour when you're losing sleep to get it done. That's fine. But getting started on a long-term project is difficult, and then I would argue that getting started every day is difficult. When you sit down to write, that first sentence is going to be the most difficult every time, unless you're at the climax of your book and you want to make it impactful and all this stuff. So let me just suggest two different things. If you're a
Mhm.
nonfiction author, if you're writing a nonfiction book, um, I've heard the suggestion to structure every single chapter the same way. Meaning, you start off with an anecdotal story, you talk about the meat, and then you do like some sort of conclusion or and maybe a call to action or a implementation exercise at the end of every chapter. If you look at Atomic Habits, it's done the same way. If you look at Deep Work, it's done the same way. Every chapter is almost the same. 48 Laws of Power, done the same way, right? You want, because then what it gives you is, okay, I have this idea and I have this idea. I want to put them in the book somewhere. Where does it fit? Oh, well, since all of my chapters are segmented out, I can say, this story fits at the top of that chapter, and this little tip fits in the middle of this chapter. Boom. Now I know where everything is.
Hmm.
For fiction, there's two kind of approaches you'll hear. One is called discovery writing, and one is plotting. Um, Discovery writing to me is more fun because you just put two characters in a room with a problem and you just start writing. And as you're writing, kind of like you journaling, Pete, you're almost discovering what's happening as you're writing, and it's like you're reading it for the first time. You're living it right there. The problem happens when you're right, and that's how I write short stories, because I love that process of discovery and creation and storytelling. The problem comes when you write a longer term story, because now there's plot holes everywhere because you're just writing off the cuff. And there are processes you can go through to keep yourself straight in editing, but in terms of writing a book, I would highly suggest going with plotting. That's how it's always been done. I think that's how it should be done. And when you follow this snowflake method, there's one of the steps that has you break out every scene into its own Excel spreadsheet. And it sounds so clinical and it sounds like that's not creative at all. But actually, that's the very step that helped me write the book. Because what would happen is every day I would sit down to write, or not, I didn't write every day. I wrote once a week for about 8 or 9 months, and I ended up writing the whole book. I would have about 2 hours every week just because of our schedule. And what happened is I would sit down, what am I going to write? Well, I'm looking at my spreadsheet. Well, I've already written these three scenes. They're all highlighted green. Now I'm on the fourth scene. I know exactly what I'm going to write, and I know exactly where it falls in the story. I don't have to ask myself, what do I want to write today? No, it's already plotted out for me and it's already there. So then
Hmm.
I would just a little tidbit. I really use Pavlovian responses. So I heard about this author who he got himself addicted to nicotine gum because he wanted to write, but he could only chew the gum when he was writing. So he forced himself to write so he could chew the nicotine gum. Now, I don't suggest that. Do not do that. But I use that same method. So what I would do is I would sit down on my computer. I would play the same music track. It's like an hour-long Arctic music track. No lyrics. Chew mint gum, and I would put on my blue light glasses and my headphones. And that was the Pavlov. My body is now. I'm telling my body we're in writing mode. My mouth is occupied with gum, so my brain can go. Right. My ears are occupied with music to get me in the same feeling and vibe. And my glasses are on, so my body knows. Okay, now I'm writing. And all I had to do is look at the Excel spreadsheet. I would start a timer, just so you know, I would start a timer and then I would write. I'm not looking at the timer. I'm not trying to fight anything. I'm just writing,
Yeah.
writing, 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 writing.
Yeah.
And then I get to the end of the chapter or get to the end of the scene. I get to a stopping point and I'm like, all right, I'm good. Turn it over. It's been an hour and a half. Pause it. Calculate. I highlight all the words, see how many words I've written, track it, take everything out, spit my gum out, and I'm done. That's the end of the habit. As you read Atomic Habits, that recording of how many words I wrote helped me finish the habit, helped me full circle close the loop. And
Wow.
that was it. So that was my process for writing. And actually, while I'm going to find this little note here because I've tracked every single time I was working on that book, I tracked all of my writing times. Let's see if I can find it here. Um, I also keep track of different cool names that I hear throughout the week, or if I hear a word. I like writing fantasy. So I'm like, oh, that's a cool concept. Let me just jot that down really quick. Writing times. Let's see. Man. So anyway, yeah, that's the process of that I used. Here they are. So you can kind of see it'll say like 22,000 words in an hour and 44 minutes, 900 words in 40 minutes, and you
Yeah.
can kind of see. And I got a little bit faster, but it was just a way for me to. And then I think I took a break, and that was novel writing, NaNoWriMo in 2023 or whatever year that was. And so I just kept track because it's like, you know
Yeah.
what? It just helps, it's even if it's
Yes.
400 words, that's 400 words more than I had yesterday, and I'm
Yes.
glad I sat down and did it. And there were times when my wife was like, "I know you wanna write tonight," and I was like, "Oh, no, let me clean the floors," and she's like, "No, I'm gonna strap you in this chair." She didn't actually strap me, but I was like, "You sit your tail down and you write,"
Yeah.
and I would get 200 words and I'm just it's just so hard to get through, but then I go to bed content knowing that I created something more. I added to the story and just a little bit.
Man, that is so powerful. I track things too, and I think it helps you get that momentum because if you were to not have an entry that day, you would kind of feel like didn't get it done, and it could be
Right.
10 o'clock at night and you haven't done it, but you put yourself in that routine of the gum, the glasses, the think, and I think I do the 3-2-1 evening, which is 3 hours no food, 2 hours no work, and 1 hour no screen time. So I do think you have to have
Mm.
a system that because what you said earlier about most people they'll watch TV and then fall asleep. Well, you're stimulating the brain with all this dopamine stuff, and you're wondering why you can't get to sleep. You're watching a action movie at 11 o'clock at night, and it's like, okay, well, you just put your brain through an action movie. How are you going to wind down from an action movie?
Yeah,
Yeah,
right,
so
right.
I do like that routine. That routine makes it all possible because what's the old saying? Um,
If I keep doing what I've always done, I'm gonna keep getting what I always got.
yeah.
Is that the one?
Mhm. Yeah, that's one of them. And it's just like you have to do a little bit each day and have that because you can't write that book in one day. So you break it down, but you have to get into the mindset of that creative. If you were coming home and sitting down and watching TV for 2 hours and then you would go write your book, it wouldn't happen
No, you're not
because
gonna do it,
you've
yeah.
just put your brain through this, whatever it is. So that is a very powerful way of, and then you look back, what you're showing me on that screen. It's like you had a process, a
Mhm.
system that helped you to go from the start to finish and do it a little bit each day. And
Right, exactly. And I think you're right about the TV thing, and that's not just TV, that's social media, that's all of it. The more we input, right? So like, here's something interesting about a book is that you actually have to work to read a book. You actually have to move your eyes across the page and make the connections and imagine things. Your brain is working and it's digging for meaning and it's finding it, and it's
yeah,
so valuable. I mean, it's really precious. But but when you're watching a TV, that movie is going to play whether you're watching it or not. You have to do zero work to put it. You don't have to understand anything nowadays. I mean, there's some of the older movies are kind of, or Christopher Nolan movies, kind of hard to understand. But the thing about the amount of mental laziness you have watching that movie. Now, that's not to say we shouldn't relax and watch movies with our families, but if you're used to mental laziness all the time, just consuming, 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 when you actually go to do some mental work, that's going to feel like pulling nails on a chalkboard. It's going to feel so hard because you're
so
like, what? And you're thinking, oh, it's writing. It should be fun. Why is this so hard for me? Well, it's because you're not used to doing work up here, right?
mhm.
You've been journaling now for how many years, and you're used to working. You're used to that. So when for you to create something, you know that at first it's going to be all right, let's get this done. But as soon as you jump in and you designated time to it, man,
Hmm.
you're gonna be killing it. You're gonna have such a good time,
Yeah.
especially if you're collaborating, especially if you're doing something you love. So yeah, for people who want to write a book, this is my biggest piece of advice. Stop consuming stories just to relax.
Yeah.
Your better use of relaxation is taking a walk outside, letting your mind wander, right? And that's actual refreshment, not just what you think is relaxation when you're really just exhausting yourself, right? Your actual refreshment.
Hmm.
And then I think you'll be filled up enough to be able to write something meaningful. But if you're just consuming, oh, I want to write a movie, I want to write a book. Why? Why? Because you want to, yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. It gets back to, we're born to create.
Yeah.
You got to think. And so if you're in that creative mode more than you're in that consumption mode, it's going to be easier to do what you just did. To take the snowflake and put that creative process together and feel better because you're creating, not.
Right.
And I think when this is just I've heard this before, that when you're on social media, you're deciding whether I like it, do I comment on it, do I share it? So you're putting your brain through judgment. Like, is this enough to like it, to comment, or
Mm,
share it? So you're putting judgment on your brain for whatever time you're on social media. If the average is, I think it's 2 hours and 21 minutes. Look what you're doing to your brain, that you could be leaning into creating things.
mm.
Whatever it is, lean into creating. I think if you shut that TV off, you'd be a lot better off. But that's just
Yeah.
me. I didn't have a TV for a year and a half. Didn't miss it one bit. But
No,
when I
you don't.
be on social media, because it was my business, I'm not on social media. I don't miss it a bit,
Man.
because you move into other things, and I think that's so powerful. How are we looking on the nap?
Hey, she's
It's
still
starting
out.
to move.
Yeah,
She's
we're about
giving Dad some creative space. I think she's going like, I'm going to let him get into his creative
mm.
mindset, and I'm going to sleep and just get ready. Because when I wake up, I'm going to be ready to go, Dad.
So I have a question for you,
Yes.
Pete. So she's actually, yeah, been asleep for like an hour and 20 now, so she might wake up at any point. But I have a question, just when you talk about people writing a book, let's say they do the work, they make a book, they write it, they publish it, and it's out there. How do you approach someone marketing that book? So just a caveat question, maybe.
Good
I'm
question.
thinking about doing a Kickstarter for my novel. And I've reached out to a few friends who have small businesses. And I said, hey, if I did a Kickstarter, would you donate a certain amount of money? I think that the barrier is like, well, a certain amount of money to get a sponsor page on the back of the book, or like on the back, at the back matter of the book. So that way I can fund the Kickstarter, and all the individuals who buy it, they can still get a single copy, but like small businesses, they can pay a little bit more and help me out with that approach. And that will help market it a little bit as well and help them a little bit as well. So I'm curious, how do you approach book marketing with your clients?
That's a great question. There's we don't do it to be bestsellers. We do it, there's a formula called 7-11-4, which when people are online or getting to know you, they have to consume 7 hours of you. Could be a podcast, could be a workshop, could be a video, could be a webinar, whatever it is. They have to consume 7 hours if they're interested. Now, they have to be interested, or it doesn't apply. They
Right.
have to make 11 buying signals, which means they're signaling to you they're interested. Maybe they're asking for something, they're wanting whatever it is. It's Google's zero moment of truth. And 4 different platforms. The brain works magical things when it consumes 7 hours of something, makes 11 buying signals, meaning they're interested in whatever you're doing, and you do it on 4 different platforms. A book is a platform. A workshop's a platform. So what we say to people is, let's just say we bump into each other at Publix, I don't know you, and you have something about your children's book. It says, creating children's books creates adventure or something like that. And I say, dang, I love children's book. Do you write them? And you say, yeah, I create memories through children's books. And I go, so you pique my interest. Then all of a sudden, you know, you're gone. And I say, hey, before you go, can I have a card? Do you have any way I could like know more? And you give a card. Well, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look you up. And if I look you up, and which I have, you have a lot of information out there. You allow me to continue the journey with you.
Mm.
So if we say a local sandbox is 20% of a person's impact and influence, you know, like, and trust about 140 people. So if you look like in a crowd and you're in a crowd of people, of 100 people, because I know you, I will see you right away. It's the brain's familiar.
Interesting. Yeah.
So if you're familiar with 140 people in your local area, but there is billions worldwide. So when I search you, I'm going to go on a journey with you because you've built curiosity. We've had a conversation. And I'm going to continue the journey if you give me information like a podcast, a book, anything I can to know more about you. But if you go through 7, 11, 4, the brain just clicks. So if you have a billion people out there that speak English and they have potential to go on a journey with you, if you give them a reason to go on the journey, you have demand from a billion people. So that's why online, and we're in a global world now, your book can be enjoyed halfway around the world. They can order it from Amazon, wherever country they're in. So you're not really, you can do what you just described as a sponsor, a kickstart. But if you just build your influence online and allow people to go on a journey with you, I'm buying your book because I get to know, like, and trust you
Wow.
through your content. So the biggest opportunity for people is take their 140 small group of local people, transfer it into a 80%, which is really the bigger global sandbox, which you can create millions of people that you're creating demand for your book because you're putting content out there. This chapter's about this. You can put anything out there that helps people to get to know you, like you, and trust you. Once they do that, they're going to buy your book. It's just the way we think. We have to trust the author. We got to get to know the author. And it's just a process that can happen online. So that's why we like books. It's just another way. We give them away, really. It's just another way for people to get to know us.
It's a point of connection.
They're
Yeah.
sleeping. I'm sleeping. They're reading my book. So that helps them to get to know, like, and trust you.
Yeah. No, that's a great use. A point of connection.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
So what do you think? What are you most excited about next year as far as children's books and creating things in Joel's life?
Yeah. Wow. That's a good question. So I have recently heard of a concept called misogi, I think, and it's called the misogi challenge. And it's not really a challenge. It's just the idea that you have one big goal every year. That's it. You don't try to have all these ambitions for the next year, a whole list of
Yes.
things, a whole thing. It's one thing. Just focus on the one. And obviously, I'm going to do other things because I'm a creative, I'm a collaborator. I love doing things. I make clips with my friends. But the one goal I have for next year is to publish my novel. I've been working on it for 3 years. I'm sick of it. I love it so much, but it needs to be out there. And I feel like it's getting closer. I'm about to finish up the third draft, the final polish that before I submit it to publishers and agents and possibly do a Kickstarter down the line if no one picks it up. And I'm just, my goal for by next Christmas, I want to have that book published and in people's hands because I want to move on with my life. I want to do other things. And, like you said, I don't want to die with books in me. I don't want to die with things that the Lord has for me that I'm not doing. And so my one goal is to pursue that. And that's what I think the most excited about in terms of creation, always willing to help and like I'm editing stuff for the church or editing
Mhm.
stuff for other friends or stuff. But that's the one thing I'm super excited about. But what about you, Pete? I know that you were working on a big project this month. What are
Yeah.
you most excited about for 2026?
First, yes, I love what you just said. The one thing, there's something powerful about focus and clarity. And yes, you'll be creative. So my one thing, I've always I believe in bringing life to businesses because the bigger your business, the more impact you can make on the world. And we
Mm,
want to bring good, influential people to make that impact. Our I have done 400, 500 podcasts. And the one thing that has been lacking is how do I easily connect everybody? So let's just say I have a guy, I know him. He writes Bible stories for kids, and he's an artist and he beautiful stuff.
what's his name?
His name is Tony Van Dyke. And he
Amazing. I'm gonna look him up.
and here's the cool thing is he's better if he knows you. You're better if you know him.
Hmm.
This he sent me all his artwork. I put it in a card and sent it to him. Beautiful characters that he wants to tell a story. But he's a character writer. He tells good stories, and that's what he loves to do, but he's doing other things too to support what he loves to do.
Right. Aren't we all?
Give him the ability to do what he loves to do as his primary thing, not his secondary thing. So, our school community is my number one focus. Bring the community together, bring all my podcasts together, people that have similar interests, connect them because together you're better. And through all that process of getting to know stories, I can remember stories. I know everybody's story because it's easy to remember stories
Hmm.
and bringing those stories together and connecting people because everybody has those dreams, those ideas of what they want to do. They may not have the process that you just described on how to write that book. They might not have that in them because they didn't know about it. But all of a sudden, they meet Joel and they listen to his podcast explaining it, and it opens up the world to them. Now they start on that journey to get that book out because they
Hmm.
now know a way to do it because they got to meet Joel, and Joel easily we have in the community to connect. I say, you got to meet Tony. Tony, you got to meet Joel. And so you can, in a platform, because our platform doesn't do a good community building. I've been looking at one for probably 60 days and I've decided this is the one we're going to focus on entirely for next year.
Wow. Yeah. And I know school launched or maybe it was last year for the first time, and it was a big push. And I even started well, I didn't start a community. I toyed around with the idea. I did a free trial. I was looking at it and I was like, this would be a really cool place to gather people. But I didn't have any sort of system for that at the time. And I was about to move and we were doing all this other stuff. So I think school is a really great option. So yeah, I'm excited to see how that plays out. And I think you're right. When you focus on one thing, it
Yes.
feels a little simplistic, but in reality, that one thing has a billion things in it. You have to unfold it and say like, oh, if you want to write a book, what's it going to be about? What's the pros? How do you edit a book? Should I use this word or not? Should I use
Yeah.
this letter or not? It's like all the decisions that come to the one thing helps you focus your journey instead of like, oh, I also like part of me, I've always wanted to make a board game. I have a few ideas, and I've mocked up a few ideas. I want to make a board game. Well, that's not next year. Next year is the book. You know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I might to take a break from the book. I might toy around with this,
Yeah.
but my drive is the one thing.
Yes.
You know.
That is, I think, if somebody, I always say, like, what's the one thing that you would want people to take home, on a podcast? That's that one thing. Because you can, in 2027, you could work on the board game. That could be your one thing. But if you focus, like you just shared with the community, that one thing, everything drives that one thing. You have so many. I think that's absolutely so powerful, because if you focus on it, you'll get it. But most people are very distracted, so they finish the year and they go, "What did I get done?" And they kind of throw their hands up, like, "I got distracted a lot."
Yeah.
you know?
What's the quote? And maybe we can end on this because she's
Yeah,
starting to move.
yeah.
But the quote
Oh
is,
man, I have
w-
to give her. She slept
she
good.
did. She did. I pumped her full of food before, so I gotta. She's probably gonna be hungry still, though. That's funny. The quote that I'm thinking is, "We overestimate what we can do in a day, and we underestimate what we can do in a year."
Yes.
Is that the thing?
That's it. That is
Wow.
exactly it. And that's
Yeah.
why it just nails it, what you said about the one thing. It just really, really does sum up and can you imagine how you feel at the end of the year? The one thing you wanted to get that book published and you got it done. The
Hmm.
satisfaction you feel is just that I got it done. I
Yeah. Yeah.
didn't keep kicking the can down the road. You got it done. And
Mhm.
that'll fuel next year. So the board game, if that's
Exactly.
one thing, becomes,
Well,
okay, I got that one thing done. Now I'm gonna get, yeah, I love that. I
right.
love
So it builds on top of each other, but also the one thing should still be a challenge enough to where you most likely will get it, but you're gonna have to work really hard to get that thing.
yeah.
It
Oh
shouldn't
yeah.
just be like, okay, my one thing is to mow the grass tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah.
you know, but like it's a big long-term challenge. So
Yes.
all right, Pete. Well, I had a great time talking to you. I'm
Yes,
so
me
glad to
too.
hear about I need to
Yeah.
drink more water in the morning. That's what I'm taking away from your routine. I don't drink water. I drink straight coffee, and maybe I need to pump a glass of water first. And I have
Yes.
been journaling more though, so we'll see how the routine goes. Maybe we can check in a few months and see how it's all going.
Sounds good. Send me the information on Snowflake.
Yeah,
I'll
I
put it
will.
in the show notes, because I think I'm sure the listeners are going to want to drill down into that process, because it really makes a lot of sense. So thanks,
Yeah.
Joel. Appreciate it. Merry Christmas to you, brother.
Hey, Merry Christmas, man.
Thanks.